withdraw their profits after 60% of the construction is complete by law, and there has to be a bank guarantee in place once that profit is withdrawn, and there is a 5% profit that has to be retained in an account for a 1-year period after construction. So this is no more a wheeler, dealer, trader turned developer market anymore. It is real estate developers, and there is a theory behind it that the government is keen to effectively move the market into the larger government players, the sort of semi-government players, and the private developers will sort of, filter away. I think reference has already been made to. Sorry, just take one step back again. There are two big factors that we've seen from a developer perspective that has caused a slowdown in the market, apart from all the world crisis. That's something completely relevant but separate. Dubai basically passed two very, very important laws. One was the escrow, and one was recently law number 13, which relates to pre-registration. Pre-registration basically means that the government now does all transfer of plan sales, and they keep the transfer fees 2%. Developers no longer do that. That's obviously an income generation that's moved to the government. But there's been a 2-month moratorium. The law was passed, I think, in the beginning of September, and it was supposed to have gone live beginning of November. But I don't think that will have happened. We, for example, have certainly not been asked by the land department to upload all our information. But in effect, what's going to happen is every single buyer, every single seller will now do their transfer at the land department. The land department will have a record of exactly who the owner is at this point in time. Technically, no transfers were supposed to have taken place in this 2-month period. And that's one of the main reasons why activity has slowed down significantly. I mean, you hear many horror cases about things in International City, etc., where you have title deeds from Nakheel, but they can't do a transfer because the developer is not permitted to do a transfer. You go to the land department, Nakheel has not uploaded the affection plans for the individualized units at the land department, so basically nothing can happen. You have people with mortgages, MOUs in place, bank finance in place, they are lapsing. So this is basically from that perspective. Secondly, pre-registration, as I think was discussed, article, I can't remember, 11 or whatever it was, 13, which is about the 30% of the amount. Basically, the law currently states that 30% of the amount that you have paid is the maximum amount that can be retained by a developer. There is a 30-day period as well. So what happens is that you actually, in theory, I don't know in practice, but in theory, you're supposed to lodge a complaint with the land department, since they're technically supposed to have all the information about the property and who the buyer and who the seller is. The land department gives the buyer 30 days notice by electronic communication, fax, telephone, whatever, to come up with whatever is in their payment schedule. If you can't come, effectively, they will link it with the escrow account. On behalf of the developer, they will authorize the bank to release 70% of the amount that the buyer has paid, with 30% being the amount retained in the escrow account for the developer. There is a dispute account, a separate dispute account. There is talk that 30% of the amount paid is too little in the current situation. And I have heard, but it is just a rumor or whatever on the grapevine, that they're talking about 20% of the purchase price being more realistic in this particular situation. I don't know what's going to happen, but there is a case to say that 30% of the amount paid on a 5% in Abu Dhabi floor is not really a lot. 1.5% is the maximum loss, 3.5% back. Whether you actually get it back is a different question, but that's basically where we are at the moment. So from the legal perspective, there are many things in place. Law number 14 is a very quiet law. It's to do with mortgages. The banking institution has relied on private developers at the moment to register their mortgages. We, for example, have an internal register where we keep a log of all the banks that have lent money on properties that Trident has, for example, developed. And that's not a very safe system because, it relies on a developer making sure that the monies have been received in full before the bank, lets their lien go over the property. So law number 14 is basically making mortgages now compulsory registered against the property at the land department. That's really it. It is a new law. There is a lot of gray area, and I think, inshallah, maybe in a couple of months' time it will settle down. So I hope that helps. Thank you, sir.
I have a question.
It's only Dubai.
The question is whether the law is for Dubai only or for the entire UAE.
It's only Dubai.
The law is for Dubai. That's the clarification. Before I open to some more questions from the floor, there may be individuals on the floor that may not have come to my attention who feel they have some knowledge to contribute to the session tonight. Do I have any takers for that? People who feel they have a perspective, particularly on the economic situation globally, that they feel hasn't been covered or they wish to cover. This is not a question I'm looking for. I'm looking for a statement. Yes, you have a statement to make? Yeah. Please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Mukhtar, I mentioned there's no monopoly on money, so I'm going to contribute if I can. My name is Muhammad Fazil. I'm no expert, but I've studied economics, so I thought it may be useful to share some of the things I've learned with you. The first thing I'd like to say is this, that over the last 10 years or so, we've seen something known as the hunt for yield become very, very common amongst investors everywhere. And when I came to Dubai back in December, one thing I realized is that people here expect to earn 15, 20, 30% a year, whereas back home in London, if we earn 6 or 7% a year, that's quite reasonable. I think now people need to perhaps become a little bit more realistic, and this is only my opinion again, become a bit more realistic about what is a reasonable return to earn. I think there is no substitute for hard work and graft. We've seen a return to some very old ideas. Mukhtar mentioned that financial crises are not new. Economists like John Maynard Keynes have become, his book has sold a lot more recently than it did back, over the last 10 years or so. What he said about financial crises and about speculation is that, and I'll just paraphrase one of his quotes. He said, normally speculation is a bubble on an enterprise, on a stream of enterprise, but the situation becomes serious when the bubbles are enterprise in a whirlpool of speculation. When I came to Dubai, I noticed that a lot of people were speculating, and that is quite a dangerous scenario. And it's not just been in Dubai, it's been globally. So we have to have a kind of a revisal of our expectations of what are realistic yields. There is no substitute for hard work, and that's all we should do, just concentrate on hard work and contribution to the real economy. Another interesting theory of Keynes is called the castle in the air theory. He uses it to describe stock markets, and I guess it's kind of apt in Dubai as well, because it seems that a lot of people may have built castles in the air here. What he says is that asset prices are usually determined by buyers and sellers obviously coming to the market, but if I buy something today, I don't necessarily need to feel that there is intrinsic value in it. What's important is whether I feel I can sell that asset onto someone else. And when you have a lot of people that are just doing that, they're not looking for intrinsic value, but they're looking to take part in a market where they can just sell it to someone else for more than they've paid for it. That's, again, not dangerous. I don't know how much value creation there is in that. And so to the extent that we can avoid practices like that where we're just speculating, I'd try and encourage people to avoid those practices. The last thing I'd like to say is this, that throughout